This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
We called over the Zoning Board of Appeals for the City of Easthampton. Today is Wednesday, May 29th, 2024. We are having a hybrid meeting as part of the rules and regulations that we're allowed to have. So in person here at 50 Payson Avenue, as well as on Google Meet. The first order of business, is there anyone here to speak to the board regarding anything other than what is on the agenda for this evening? I am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Please state your name.
Catherine Wazinski.
Yeah.
22 Overlook Drive. I wanted to raise some concerns about a number of developments in the area and the concern about the water and sewer infrastructure not being able to handle the very high building demand that's been occurring or being approved. And I think many people, including those in the Easthampton citizens, are opposed to a lot of the building that's occurring. And we would rather see a discussion happen about fixing our infrastructure and preserving agriculture.
Thank you very much. And Matt?
Yeah, I have a statement I'd like to read, which pertains to our last meeting.
Okay.
The chair of this committee, John Atwater, wrote an email to the ZBA on April 25th, implying that he had a problem with the quote tone unquote of our last meeting. I think everyone on this board knows that this was really him saying that he has a problem with my tone, as I was the only member of the board who spoke at any length during the last meeting, the night prior to his email on the 25th, so the meeting on the 24th. The email that John sent us all in the morning of April 25th says that he, quote, emailed the mayor concerning the tone of last night's meeting. I have not heard back from her yet. Regards, John Atwater. Facts are that John's email to the mayor is a collusory attempt to remove me from the ZBA, and his email was a violation of the Massachusetts open meeting laws, in my opinion. This is because the OML states that the expression of an opinion on matters within the body's jurisdiction to a quorum of a public body is a deliberation, even if no other public body member responds, and that certain discussions regarding procedural or administrative matters may also relate to public business within a body's jurisdiction. Clearly, his comments about, quote, tone, unquote, is equivalent to a comment on procedural or administrative matters of the board. I believe that Mr. Atwater's email was also potentially an intentional violation of open meeting laws, as it appeared to have been intended to intimidate and harass me personally. Unfortunately, in order to defend my own rights to free speech, as well as out of self-respect and in defense of my history of being a good standing member of this committee for over 3 years, I had to file an OML notice last week with the city and CC the chair as is required. John seems to have the ear of our mayor, and she has taken the unusual and I believe inappropriate action to attempt to remove me from this board. According to the City of Easthampton Charter rules, I still have 30 days from the date of her letter before being removed. And as is allowed under the charter, I have also filed an official response with the City Council and have requested that they reverse the mayor's action. The section 3.4 of the City of Easthampton Home Rule Charter that the mayor cited in her letter notifying me of her decision to remove me from the ZBA requires, quote, setting forth in precise detail the specific reasons for removal or suspension from a board such as the ZBA. Mayor LaChapelle's letter falls short of precise detail and in fact provides no details at all for her decision. The only reason her letter provides for my future removal from the ZBA is an allegation that my, quote, opinions, unquote, are in, quote, opposition with zoning bylaws and laws. Which specific opinions of mine is she referring to me? That would be great to know. In the course of any discussion, it is normal and proper to make statements, ask questions, use hypothetical scenarios, etc. This is how free and open dialogue works. What's really going on here is that I am an admittedly ardent proponent of development and business in general. In the last 3 years, as a member of the ZBA, I have always acted swiftly to make motions and vote to approve applicants whose applications are in order and who have the best interests of Easthampton and the free market in mind. Whereas Mr. Atwater is, by my interpretation of his statements and votes over the years, fond of leaving his mark on the projects that pass before the ZBA. And if left unchecked, his tactics result in delays and derailments of developments in the city of Easthampton. The fact that Easthampton now has below 10% of affordable housing stock is likely at least partly related to Mr. Atwater's leadership style, as he has been the chair of the ZBA for many years. Seems to me that John enjoys having applicants suffer through unnecessary and tedious zoning trivialities in order to get their projects approved. For example, in the February 2024 ZBA meeting, Atwater suggested that perhaps we should engage the Easthampton DPW to study the congestion around the former 413 Club neighborhood before approving what was a perfect application. With the current matter of the 40B housing proposal, this appears to be the ideal opportunity for Atwater to flex his zoning knowledge and stretch the proceedings into multiple meetings for months on end. Whereas the State of Mass Zoning Board Handbook discusses the hearing process in depth and mentions that it is possible that a ZBA could complete the process in only one hearing. My position is state simply that due to the facts that Section 40B requires ZBAs to be extra accommodative, and the Chapter 40B handbook describes the possibility of having only one hearing, we do not need to plan in advance for numerous extra meetings over several months, as was proposed by Chair Atwater. If the developer's comprehensive permit application is complete, we now see that it is incredibly thorough and complete. The ZBA should be able to render a decision in 1 or 2 hearings. My position seemed to upset Mr. Atwater in the meeting on the 24th, and I believe it triggered him into pressurizing the mayor into taking action against me. I prefer to live with differing opinions and tones, as long as they are not inflicting harm upon me. And I tend to not try to take such severe offense as to be unable to handle the presence of those who are not the same as me. Mr. Atwater, you may indeed get your committee without me. That remains to be seen. I am inclined to let bygones be bygones if the mayor was to withdraw her unusual decree. But in reality, it should be you, John, who is removed from the CBA, not me. Closing, I would ask the current CBA and all future zoning board members to imagine an Easthampton that looks nothing like the current Easthampton or previous Easthamptons at all. Maybe even an Easthampton that looks like Tokyo, with skyscrapers and bullet trains. This isn't because the current or past Easthamptons are or were bad places, but because of the fact that the future that we cannot imagine, the possible future with a flourishing society with equality of opportunity, diversity of people, multiplicity of opinions, and even contrasting tones, is truly the future society that all good people want to live in. Thank you.
Thank you. I will reserve the right to not respond to this one. Thank you. Good evening. I am John Atwood, Chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the City of Easthampton. This evening, we are beginning the comprehensive permit application process for 385 to 391 Main Street with community builders. The state of Massachusetts has strict guidelines which we must follow. Upon receipt of their application, we, the Zoning Board of Appeals of Easthampton, have had 30 days to hold a public hearing, which is why we are here today. The statute also states that the public hearing must not extend any more than 180 days from opening. The board must issue a decision on the comprehensive permit within 40 days of closing of that public hearing. This is then followed by a 20-day appeal period. Yes, that sounds like a long time. It is not our intention to prolong this hearing for that long. This is simply the maximum duration the state statute grants. Our goal is to have a timely and efficient meeting. We will hold bi-weekly meetings starting at 6 p.m. and lasting approximately 2 hours as needed. In an effort to keep the public hearing moving forward and discuss and focus our attention on public health, safety, project design, valid planning, and open space issues, we will ask that all members of the public, the media, allow the applicant to present the project in full detail. Once the applicant has completed their presentation, the board will ask questions of the applicant. We want to hear from all members of the public. We ask that you hold your questions until such time as we open the public speak period for the meeting. We also ask that when you are allowed to speak, you follow some simple rules. First of all, we ask that you state your name and your address for the record. Please address your questions and your concerns to the board, not directly to the applicant. Please don't repeat questions that have previously been asked. Sometimes we have hearings where the same question is asked over and over again, and the question's been answered by the applicant. We ask that all comments or questions are polite and respectful. And in an effort to keep the meeting moving, the board does reserve the right to limit speak time to 3 minutes per person, depending on the public input. Please remember, we, the Zoning Board of Appeals for the City of Easthampton, volunteers. We give our time. We are here because we care about our community. With that said, may I introduce the fellow members of the board: Anthony Corella, Matt Waugh, Paris, Timothy Garceau. Our planning department is represented by Dylan Maxfield. We also have Paul Haverty in the audience, who is from Mass Housing Partnership, who's here on our respect. We also have the mayor in presence. With that, I share the floor to Community Builders, who is applying for a comprehensive permit to create 87 new and rehabilitate 40 existing affordable rental units subject to Mass General Laws, Chapter 40B. The applicant is proposing 3 new buildings on 55.54 acres. The proposal is located at 385 and 391 Main Street in the R35 zoning district. The floor is yours.
Sure.
I'm not sure if you would like to step up to the podium.
Sure. Good evening. Hi, sorry, I'm just going to share my screen to unpack all that. Good evening. My name is Julia Scannell. I work for Community Builders. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. Apologize, the Google name is not allowing me to share. Apologies for that. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us here tonight. We're really excited to present our project at 385 to 391 Main Street in Easthampton, together with our partner, Kestrel Land Trust. Here, we think this is responsible development and a plan for growing Easthampton in ways that align with city's goals, both with land conservation and housing production. A little note about TCB. We are a nonprofit affordable housing developer and owner. We have been doing this work for over 60 years. We are headquartered in Boston, but we have a regional approach to our work. I myself am a resident of Western Massachusetts and lived here all my life and do this work out of a field office in Northampton. We have a strong connection to the city of Easthampton through our College Highway project, which is located at 391 Main Street, that was developed in 1990. So as part of this project tonight, we will be talking about that. On the screen, you can see a few other of our more recently completed projects up and down the valley, and we're just thrilled to be able to add, hopefully add some more housing here in Easthampton. Mark, if you want to.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Walmsley. I'm the Conservation Director at Kestrel Land Trust, and I've been coordinating our Growing Green Easthampton project since its inception. Today's Lawrence. Kestrel has been conserving land in the Connecticut River Valley for 50 years now, including several in the city of Easthampton. In many ways, we like to think that our work reflects the valley itself, as we prioritize the conservation of important natural landmarks and wildlife habitats, local farms, riverways, and public parks and trails. But we hope that our work also reflects the communities that we serve as well. And as an organization, we're committed to ensuring that the benefits of land conservation are more equitably experienced and enjoyed across the diversity of populations who inhabit our region. We're particularly excited about the project for you today, which we see as a critical and innovative step in that direction. As we pair a proposed multi-generational mixed income neighborhood with a new public conservation area with open fields, farmland, and forests along the Manhattan River, both designed and integrated with climate. The idea, when I say it's innovative, has already received national press coverage, and I've received multiple inquiries from communities throughout the Commonwealth to speak about the project and the ideas behind it. As a conservation organization, the importance of our region's natural resources are paramount. We considered their location and preservation at 385 Main Street very carefully. We believe that the proposal before you today is the best outcome that can be achieved. We're particularly pleased to have a coalition of other conservation groups standing with us in support of the project, including Pascomic Conservation Trust, which has conserved adjacent land, and Mass Audubon, which will hold the conservation restriction on 43 acres of acreage that Kestrel purchases. We greatly respect the work and mission of our housing partner on the project, the community builders, and we thank them, as well as the landowners of 385 Main Street, who have been exceedingly patient in allowing this project to emerge and this vision to emerge and to move forward to this critical stage. I thank the ZBA members for their thoughtful consideration of this proposal, and I hope you also come to believe in its many benefits for the city of Easthampton. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Mark so eloquently spoke about our project vision, but so I'll touch on some of the high points here again. We're thrilled to be able to equitably allow access to conservation land through affordable housing production, and also responsibly develop the beautiful at the site today by developing the frontage along the street and preserving the open space, not just for our residents, but for the entire community to enjoy. The housing project is set to be 100% affordable at a wide range of incomes, from 30% of area income all the way up to 80%, which we see as about the market of renters in the Easthampton area. So we're really thrilled that we'll be able to really serve anyone who would be looking to rent an apartment in Easthampton. We are planning to build a very high energy standard set to meet the goals set by the Commonwealth and the city of Easthampton and TCD. As I said, the 40 acres of land will be conserved in various different uses that we're thrilled about the community to use. And then it just, our partnership with Kestrel allows, it's really, as Mark said, innovative and new type of partnership that we're seeing quickly recreated across the country. And it allows for two organizations or two types of organizations that at some point might not have gone along quite well together, had different goals, to work together on a shared modes to really worthy cause. And so where we're at today. We have a wonderful team with us today who've been working on this project for almost 1.5 years now, I think, who have thoughtfully put together this proposal. So from the community builders, myself, Julia Scannell, but also my colleague, Rushna Crowley, who leads our development work in Western New England. Mark is here, of course, from Kestrel Land Trust. We have our zoning counsel from Freeman Law Group, Peter Freeman, who I will kick this over to shortly. Our engineers from Research Land Group, Spire, is here this evening. Our project architects from Queen Brittle, Brad and Charles, are here, as well as from Bowman, our parking and traffic consultant, Michael, will speak at the end of the presentation. So now I will hand this over to Peter. Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. For the record, I am Peter Freeman, Freeman Water Movement in Yarmouth on Cape Cod, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to be quite brief. The meats and potatoes of the presentation are with the slides and the professionals. I just want to briefly go over the application and the so-called eligibility requirements of the 40B. As I think was noted, it's a very complete package. The eligibility requirements in 40B are really threefold. First, that the entity applying be a limited dividend organization, and the project eligibility letter that we received from State Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, HFC, used to be DHCD. Their project eligibility letter, which addresses these things, was dated March 14th, 2024, and it's part of the application package. So the first requirement is to be a limited dividend organization. And we fulfill that requirement in that the entity that's applied, or a single purpose entity that will be created later, which is usually what happens with these development projects, agrees to sign the requisite regulatory agreement and to abide by the limited dividend provisions. So under the regulations and the case law, that establishes satisfaction of that first requirement. The second requirement is control of the land, and as the application package shows, and in partnership with Kestrel Land Trust. Kestrel Land Trust has a purchase and sale agreement with the property owner, and we, community builders, in turn, has a memorandum of understanding or agreement with Kestrel, dictates how his partnership to be developed, and most importantly, as was explained by both Mark and Julia, 43 acres will wind up separated as permanent conservation land for them, and approximately 12 acres. As will correct me, will be the development site itself. So that's the second requirement. And then the third requirement is that the applicant simply be eligible to be funded by a state subsidizing agency for housing. And again, the project eligibility letter that we have confirms and states specifically that we are eligible. So those are the three components, and it meets the requirements of 716 CMR 54.04. States that compliance with the project eligibility requirement shall be established by issuance of a written determination of project eligibility by the subsidizing agency, which, as I said earlier, that's what we have. The only other thing I'll mention in terms of the substantive matter is we have submitted a thorough request for waivers. That's the whole point of 40B, to ask for waivers from otherwise applicable zoning matters. So we believe it's thorough. We're happy to go over it at any time. Sometimes for have presentations, and either later or if there's another hearing, go over them at that time. Certainly ready to talk about that. Excuse me, anytime that you wish. So I'll end there and simply turn it over to our civil engineer and landscape fellow, which is Jeff Squire from Berkshire Design. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Again, for the record, Jeff Squire, principal partner with the Berkshire Design Group, civil engineer, landscape architects based out in Northampton. As Julia noted, we've been involved in this project for a little over a year and a half now. It is comprised, the project total is comprised of three parcels, really, 154.32, 154.32.1, and then 154.32.2. Most of that is related to the former subdivision that was anticipated along the northerly portion of the property. That and land directly adjacent to it were approved as a subdivision that was never built. The remaining acreage in the back remains also undeveloped. There's roughly 642 feet of frontage along Main Street, Route 10, and the predominant zoning district is the R35. There is a small portion of R15 that extends into the southern boundary, but the majority of the site is R35 zoning. The property is bound by the south branch of the Manhattan River to the west, and conservation land. There are single-family homes to the north and south, and I'll just go back quickly. The college apartments that was referred to is picture here. there we go, is this property here, which is just to the south and controlled by community builders. The remainder of the development is predominantly single-family homes with a large amount of open space and conservation land surrounding the west and north portions of the parcel. The property is a little bit unique in that the frontage includes a large sort of area of wetland directly adjacent to the road. There's mostly open agricultural fields, about 16 acres of agricultural fields in the center and western part of the site. And then through the site, there's a number of wetland, call them fingers for lack of better terms, but these wetland systems that collect a lot of the runoff from the higher parts of the site to the east and bring them to the Manhan River to the west. And as they move on to the west, they develop into deeper ravines as a result of years of erosion, not atypical for these types of properties and soils along stream corridors. So we have explored the site with a number of test pits. It has been fully delineated by a wetland scientist. All that has been recorded in surveys. All of the property is currently undeveloped. There is a dirt farm access road on that former subdivision parcel that provides access to the larger fields that you can see in these images that have been hayed and used for agriculture periodically over the last several years. And the other thing to note is that there is a large gas easement that does extend through a portion of the property in the north portion of the property. This is just a good aerial image showing the conservation land that this project abuts. Not only is it the Pomeroy Meadow Conservation Area, but then it's the Whitmore Conservation Area on the other side of the river. So this does provide a nice contiguous, open space protection of that green corridor. We had looked at, a number of development options for the site when this project started to understand, what some of the potential development pressure could be. The slide on the left side shows those wetland systems on the site and their associated buffer zones. There were a number of subdivision plans that were feasible that we had done as part of the feasibility aspect of the project to understand again just what the development potential was on the site. If it was obtained by this is a slide showing what the current project proposes. As noted, the western portion of the property would be conservation land held by Kestrel and with a conservation easement held by Mass Audubon. That is roughly 43 acres in total, and it also includes that former farm access road on the northern portion of the property. Plan is to construct a small public parking lot in that location that would provide public access to the larger trail system and open space network to the north and south, and to those linkages. The project would be located behind that wetland system that I mentioned that directly abuts Main Street. It envisions a new curb cut on Main Street with a roadway that goes in to access 3 parking lots. There's, I think, 84 spaces in total that include handicap spaces, and there would be 20% EV-ready spaces as required. 3 new buildings, which we'll get into more detail later. Each building is roughly 13,500 square feet. There is a plan for a new sewer line into the site that would be extended off of existing infrastructure in Main Street. We are working with both the DPW and Mass DOT as they have control over Route 10. So we've also got a highway access permit. We need to work through that permitting process with them. But we have been, also obviously working in concert with the DPW to understand, sewer and water connection requirements. There, as I mentioned, new sewer water will be a loop system that comes in off of the new curb cut and extends to connect to the water main that also serves the college apartment project. So there will be a redundancy in that overall water system there, which is always a good thing. New stormwater system, we are proposing a constructed wetland to help manage and expand those sort of resource areas that provide this, really nice natural buffer to the larger buildings that are, set back further from the road. This first building, the closest building in the north is roughly 300 feet from the road frontage. So there's quite a bit of distance between the road and that first building, and protecting and enhancing that wetland system in the front of the site was certainly a goal of the project as a way to help reduce the impacts of the development. Project includes pedestrian paths that circulate through the site that connect to both the new buildings, proposed buildings, but also to the college apartments to the south, and to the trail network that would be associated with the Kestrel land and that public access on the northern part of the property. There will be a playground, again, just building in some of the amenities for the residents, and small gathering spaces outside the buildings, a variety of shapes and forms for various functions or small gatherings, or just outdoor spaces in general. The project also is proposing a new bus stop on sidewalk along Main Street as part of hopefully a MassWorks grant application. Is that correct? That would help fund public transportation opportunities in this location, with the idea being that will also help to connect to the bike path and some of the other existing multimodal transportation systems that already exist. And with that, I will turn it over to Brad from Hugh Riddle.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm Brad with Hugh Riddle Architects. We're based out of Amherst, Mass. And the slide up now is a rendering from College Highway, you can cross the street. And I think it illustrates maybe a few of one of the, I guess, main design goals we had was to minimize the impact, develop portion of the site from College Highway. And but to that end, we turned to orient the building so the short side is facing the street. And this helps to allow views through to the conservation area, and it also serves to allow good solar exposure for PV on the pitched roofs. And as Jeff mentioned, the buildings are set back from the road a good 300 feet, which also minimize the visual from the College Highway. We made an effort to sort of break down the building massing both in the floor plan to sort of split the building so that there isn't long of a exposed facade along the street. It helps to break up the massing. And each of the three buildings has 27 apartments in them. It's a combination of studios, 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. Each building has a common space program area on the ground floor, views out to landscape common space to the exterior of each building. And the buildings in elevation there's a combination of pitched roofs and flat roofs, and a combination of composite horizontal clapboard siding and vertical metal siding, also helping to break up the building massing and minimize the visual impact. I also go back a slide. This is a view from the conservation portion of the site that I think sort of helps to sort of emphasize the relative diminutive part of the developed portion of the site in relation to the majority of the conserved portion of the site. This is a view looking towards the road back near the border with the college apartments. I think that's all we really had to say about that. And we'll go into- That's what you want.
My name is Mike Wolfhurst. I'm a traffic engineer with Bowman Consulting Group. I'm also a resident of West Ham. I conducted a traffic impact analysis for the proposed project to MassDOT or Massachusetts State DOT standards. The scope of the traffic study you can see on the screen. The 4 locations that were included in our analysis included Coleman Road, the southwest of the site and its intersection with Main Street, South Street and the intersection with Main Street to the northeast of the site. And then we also looked at 2 existing driveway apartments. In addition, we also evaluated the proposed condition with the proposed site driveway. Scope of the analysis included collecting traffic count data at all of these locations, collected peak hour, turning movement, multimodal data for a typical weekday in April. We covered the morning and the afternoon peak hours from 7 in the morning to 9 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon to 6 in the afternoon. We also collected multi-day 24-hour count data along Coleman Road and along South Street in order to evaluate a signal warrant analysis, which I will talk about momentarily. In addition to that, we evaluated crash history at all of these locations along Main Street, looking at the most recent 5 years available from the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. We conducted a site visit for all of the 4 locations here, collected some additional field data, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail. And then lastly, conducted an operational analysis modeling each of these study intersections for existing conditions, future no-build conditions for year 2031, and then proposed conditions for year 2031 in order to assess the potential traffic impacts due to the project. For our site visit, I mentioned we looked at each of these 4 locations along Main Street. On the top right, you can see South Street pictured with relatively recent improvements that were applied to the intersection to provide accessibility features for pedestrians, improved pavement markings, and a rectangular rapid flashing beacon for the existing crossing of Main Street. On the bottom right, you can see a photo of the approximate proposed, looking from the approximate driveway to the southwest, where we collected site distance data for both the existing College Highway apartment driveway and the proposed location of the site driveway in order to evaluate the sight lines in and out of the project. Speak to those findings momentarily. We also conducted a field evaluation of peak delays along Coleman Road and South Street in order to better understand traffic operations at those 2 key intersections. Then lastly, we collected speed data along Main Street. This included a radar speed study at the intersection of South Street along Main Street, as well as gathering speed data at the approximate site driveway location along Main Street, the point of which was to understand the prevailing speeds along Main Street and their potential impacts to operations and safety. With the understanding of the existing conditions, our next step was to evaluate the potential impacts of project trip generation. And to do that, we projected the number of project trips be generated by the proposed 87 dwelling units. To do this, we utilize the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, which provides established rates for various land uses. Land use that we evaluated or that we assumed for this was a multifamily low-rise housing complex, which was appropriate for this type of use. Based on those rates, we found that the project is projected in the weekday morning to generate 12 additional trips in, 38 trips out, for a total of 50 new trips on the roadway network in the morning peak hour. In the afternoon peak hour, we projected 37 trips inbound, 21 trips outbound, for a total of 58 trips generated by the project in the PM peak hour. Schematic that you see here is for the PM peak, which is the highest trip generator for the project, generating hour for the project. When distributing these trips along the roadways, we use the existing travel patterns on the roadways in order to project how these new trips will be distributed through the network. The takeaway here that I'd like to point out is that the largest volume of traffic that you can see here distributed on the network will be heading southwest on Main Street in the evening, entering the site via the proposed site driveway, at a total of 22 vehicles per hour, which equates to roughly a vehicle every 3 minutes. The left turns into the proposed site driveway are less than 10 vehicles per hour and are not anticipated to be impactful to the operations of traffic along the roadway along Main Street based on our traffic part of the study. And so the overall conclusions that we found as part of our study was that the site distance available at the existing College Highway apartment driveway, which would also be connected to the proposed site internally, and as well as the proposed driveway, both exceed current standards for site distance and sight lines based on the observed operating speeds on Main Street. We also found, as I mentioned, that the project trips generated are not anticipated to have significant impacts, be minimally impactful to the surrounding roadways and intersections. As part of our crash evaluation or safety evaluation, we looked at crash rates at each of the project study intersections, and we found that notably the intersection of Main Street and South Street has a rate of crashes over the last 5 years that is twice the statewide average. All of the other study intersections are below the statewide average for unsignalized intersections. We also observed that the existing speeds along Main Street exceed 40 miles per hour. The posted speed limit on Main Street in the vicinity of the project site is 40 miles per hour, and the 85th percentile speed was recorded to be 42 miles per hour. Further northeast at South Street, where we noted the crash history, the speed limit posted is 35 miles per hour, and we observed that vehicles were traveling at 85th percentile speeds were 42 miles per hour. So at both locations, we observed speeds along Main Street in excess of 40 miles per hour. When considering the speeds along Main Street in combination with the volumes and the crash history at South Street, both South Street and Coleman Road, specifically due to the speeds that were recorded, did meet signal warrant criteria, which is not a mandate for providing a traffic signal, but rather a guideline that a traffic signal may be considered at those locations where criteria is met. Based on this, remedial measures such as signage, striping, and enforcement could be considered to reduce vehicle speeds traveling along Main Street. Due to a combination of the high speeds and the crash rate at South Street and Main Street, if the remedial measures were unsuccessful in reducing vehicular speed, which could be considered with signalization That concludes the traffic analysis.
Thank you, Michael. I want to provide just a little bit more context on the guide of the traffic study. So, because we've been working very closely with the planning department in Easthampton, based off the city's knowledge of those two intersections that are actually outside of the bounds of a typical traffic study in this type of project, we wanted to explore those two intersections, knowing that they were concern of the cities. And because we're with lunch and partner with the city on a MassWorks application, those were two areas which the city thought might be able to make improvements as part of that grant opportunity. So that is why they were brought into our traffic study. As Michael shared, the proposed project doesn't have negative impact on those two locations, but that those two locations are not ideal as they stand today. So I just wanted to provide a little guidance on why we were discussing today. So thank you, Michael and Peter.
Thank you, Julia. Excuse me, Peter Freeman again. I just remembered one thing that I wanted to mention. If Julia mentioned it, I'm sorry for repetition. But we did include in the application that it's likely that this project will be phased in part because of financing considerations. So we do want flexibility, not being presumptuous, but hopefully working out the permanent conditions when we can, as we do need flexibility on the phasing, which we anticipate would be the new 87 units of construction first, and then the rehab of the existing cottage apartments. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. That's correct. It's a competitive resource environment that we work in, and so right now we think that it's a project, but again, flexibility should that change. Great. So again, I want to thank my whole team for being here tonight, and thank you to the board for hearing our presentation. We're so excited to be in front of you tonight, and I'm going to stop now for questions.
Well, got a lot of information. You let the think heads. Good. You have some questions?
All right. For Michael regarding traffic. The second driveway connection, what's the benefit of having that? It's in front of fire access. What's the benefit of having traffic coming out of the two different intersections instead of just channeling safety purposes?
Correct. Yeah. So there is the circulation within the site is a one-way road.
What is?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Are, for the housing projects, these, Hampton residents only, it's gonna be open up outside. I guess my concern would be, for East Hampton residents, it seems like over just East Hampton residents, if it's about our local needs. Could speak to that perhaps.
I'll touch very, we cannot restrict who lives in housing via fair housing violation. So they won't be available to East Hampton residents that will call East Hampton. Oh, sure. Peter's reminding me that in some instances, there is a local preference that some municipalities and partner developers have worked out. So oftentimes that, again, is not widely received by all partners in the deal because of housing concern. But
So can you just repeat that?
sure.
Again, anticipating a possible condition if you want a local preference. We do have to say that it's subject to the approval of the state agency, HLC. But under the Fair Housing Law, it's been interpreted in Massachusetts that there can be a local preference. Local residents and workers for up to 70% of the affordable unit goes in this budget. So if that's something that the board wants, I don't think we disagree as to a condition, but just want to point out at the outset, as I said, that it has to be subject to the approval of the state agency because it's empirical data that they gather, graphics of the community and the surrounding community, and it has to be implemented with the help of the work with the state and us to develop that information. So even if it's a condition, the state might not approve it. Just wanted to clear.
That's my understanding, and that's why I asked that question.
Sure.
I can hear your mic, no mic. That's it.
I
Thank
don't
you.
know if it was. So I see a lot in your memo, appreciate the memo for sure. Talks a lot about Easthampton needs, right? I see that, in terms of the statute, what needs are, but in terms of our local community, what are our needs? I don't know if it's right study on perhaps our low income population or unhoused population or anything like that. What are needs? Statutory percentage number that we.
Sure. So we have done a market study in Easthampton that surveys the needs. We've also had a robust community process. We're working closely with the housing groups within the city to hear what the needs and wants of that are. We heard last year that it's family housing, so housing for all individuals, not just restricted to one population, and also at a wide range of incomes, which is the project we have today that serves those 30% of AMI up to the 80%, and I'm sorry for the acronyms and all of that, but 80% of area median income is about what, as I said before, what we see about like the average market renter in Easthampton. So kind of like that missing middle that we hear so much about, that maybe isn't served by a more traditional public housing or other affordable housing option. We would have a great percentage of our units inside for that. So those who are being greatly impacted by rising market rate rents in Northampton and Easthampton and the surrounding areas would be able to benefit from stabilized rent here.
So there are different size units like
Sure.
lower income units and or median income units here or
It's about an equal spread between the incomes. So there are some at 30%, some at 60% right in the middle, and then some at 80%. And then the unit size, are you talking about the bedroom size of the units? Or
yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think it'd be related.
Sure. So they're all spread equally. We have the same percentage across the income buckets as well as the unit size bucket. So that's fair.
How many bedrooms to go up to?
Sure. Of the 3 bedrooms is the largest. There are only, I think, 2 3-bedrooms.
I think you said studio to
3. Most of the units will be 1 bedroom, 2-bedroom units.
I don't mean to jump too far ahead, but I'm from Northampton. There's a lot of fairly large complexes in Northampton. I actually came to Easthampton from Northampton, so I'm very familiar with this area, and I do know that some of the larger complexes bring in some negative things as well. Just having a lot of people in one area, but there are factors to consider. The health safety of occupants in the surrounding town. Is there somebody that's going to be? And again, I don't want to get too far ahead, but is there some site of any kind in terms of checks? I mean, landlords do generally run some kind of baseline background check, stuff like that, or anything like that.
Yes. PCB, we both develop and own and manage our properties. I would say that this is not going to be a large scale property, as I think some of the ones that you're seeing in Northampton, this is a much smaller community. But we do have background checks, inquiry checks, and all of that for our residents. Of course, considering the equitability of all of that with those who are needing housing. But of course, we have housing guides.
Yes, I'm not sure. So when you say equitability, you just mean fairness to everybody. I heard conservation and equity, and I didn't really understand how.
I don't believe I said conservation.
Well, I did. I thought I heard something.
Oh, sure. No, I'm just saying that yes, we run background checks on all. If it is easier to answer the question.
Thank you.
Sure. I think it's just.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to fill out a little bit from your previous question too. You were asking about needs in Easthampton. And I have to say that one of the most compelling things about this particular site for Kestrel Land Trust was that it is both in the city's open space and recreation plan and the city's housing production plan. So both of those needs came together right on this land. You could see the potential interest being competing. So we've come up with something where we think they could actually work together. In terms of, equitable access to conservation land, I was the one who said that. And it is again, a growing concern for us. Again, we are a conservation group. Well, we see the value of conserving land. We also know that there are sometimes unintended consequences. Land values can rise around conservation land. Sometimes only wealthier communities have access to properties this special. So to be able to have a mixed income, multi-generation community with access to an open space, we see as being really quite wonderful. The views of Pomeroy Mountain, the views of Mount Tom, having walking trails on open in the fields. There is very possibly going to be active farming, either a community farm, a community garden on this site. That is how we see kind of trying to achieve more equity for our land conservation efforts.
Thank you for that clarification. No further questions. Matt? Go ahead. You're good. First, your design questions. The fingers you showed of water areas that extend down into pond.
Yes.
Will the construction of these buildings happen on the estuary that leads into the Manhattan, I imagine?
So we were able to design the project to remain a buffer zone only project. So there are no direct impacts to wetlands. Any regrading work, any work proposed on the site is exclusively contained just to the buffer zone, the 100-foot buffer zone. We have taken advantage of some of the existing drainage patterns on the site. The western portion of the site drains to those finger-like wetlands that you mentioned. We've been able to design this stormwater such that isolated wetland, I'll call it an isolated wetland at the front of the site, which actually has a, direct culvert under Route 10. At its low point, we're using that and enlarging that system to manage all the majority of the stormwater for the site. So it's all actually headed in the opposite direction from the Manhattan.
So you saying it has a culvert under 10, is that going to affect then the property across the street?
There is no direct, we have not found an outlet for that pipe. Nor does DOT have an outlet location for that pipe. We cannot increase flows leaving the site, so that's our benchmark. So what we have to do is design a system to accommodate, a 100-year stormwater event on the site and not increase, flows that leave the site. As mentioned, just none of the stormwater extends to the western portion of the site. It all heads to the east to an existing stormwater system.
Causes some concern. Just the amount of rain we received on Monday alone. And where did that water go on Monday and where would it go in years Monday?
So again, this wetland system at the front of the site is primarily a function of where the drainage, for that, for the front quarter to third of the site drain right now. I presume Mass DOT was the one who installed that culvert years ago. They haven't produced any records of where that goes. Again, the discussion has been that we can't increase flows leaving the site, so that's what we've got to demonstrate.
You say you're designing to 100-year flood?
Yes. Or 100-year storm.
100-year storm.
Yes. And the mass stormwater standards have just changed recently, which have increased those storm event numbers. Yes.
You almost answered the question.
As a result of, yes, I anticipated that concern. That is,
Because we all know it's raining.
we were always somewhat conservative with our drainage designs, but yes, the state has increased those rainfall amounts that we're required to detain now. That has been considered.
All right. I think I'm moving on to Mark concerning the traffic study. You indicated that the alignment of the new access road would be somewhat aligned with the existing Easthampton professional building. Is it going to line up directly, or is it just going to stagger just a little bit? How does that lay out?
Sure. It would be offset. Trying to see if we have a good site plan. Because we're having. We'll bring it up, but it is offset existing. Great. So you can see here, oh, you probably can't see my mouse, but the eastern corner of the site, you can see the proposed site driveway.
Yep.
And then you have the professional building driveway at 384 Main Street, which is just southwest of the proposed driveway. And then there's a residential driveway.
And because of the wetlands on the property, you don't think you could align that closer? This is my question for design.
The grade does deepen quite a bit there as you approach the road.
Okay.
And so I think, yeah, just concerns about, encroaching on that wetland. Too much was definitely a consideration.
And then another question for you, I'm sorry, before you stamp. The rates, you said that you use state rates for transport, for travel times or, modes of travel. When you were making your determination on how many trips at peak hours and things along those lines?
I believe what I said was, I used the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation rates for vehicular traffic.
For vehicular traffic. And does that take into consideration where is that based? Is that based in a rural area, a suburban area, semi-rural as we are? Because I look at the car travel time trips in Boston are going to be different than the car travel trips in Easthampton.
Sure. So the data that's collected by the Institute of Transportation Engineers is nationwide, and they collect hundreds of samples from different sites for developments such as this that are quite ubiquitous throughout the country. In terms of the setting, it can vary for each data set. For a data set for low rise, relatively not dense high rise apartments, the setting would generally be more suburban or rural. And so those characteristics would tend to align with the setting that's being proposed here. The rates themselves are average across, as I mentioned, many different samples, and would be indicative of, I believe you mentioned mode share. We aren't taking any credits for reducing vehicular mode share, given the setting here, not being in a downtown area. So we're conservatively high, assuming that all of the trips are happening via personal automobile. And as mentioned, there is a existing bus stop close to the College Highway apartment driveway that would be relocated with a formal pullout closer to the proposed driveway, which could potentially reduce vehicular mode share for some trips generated by the site. But we are not taking credit for that. We're being conservative in the estimates to go higher vehicular traffic, just to understand what kind of a more worst case scenario for traffic impacts could be.
I appreciate that. And then my last question is for Councilor Frost. You indicated that it would be shared public land, public use land.
Yes. It would be open to the public. Yes.
Open to the public, and the access, where would the public park?
Yeah, let's see if I can. Is it? I can show on the board actually.
Careful, it's a touch screen.
It's right there. Okay, so I won't touch it. But right there, there will be a parking area.
And approximately how many cars will fit in that parking area?
I think there's 12 or 14 spaces.
Okay, because I know, because, pretty consistently, the new location on East Street is overflowed.
Yes, indeed it is. There were simply some slight constraints about the dimensions of the property there. That we have to.
But I just, looking at this and my concern would be that the owner, or the occupants of the building would then not have places to park their cars on a nice, Saturday or Sunday afternoon that we just had. If, that many people would come to this.
Yeah, no, I'm assuming I hadn't consulted this before, but the parking within the parking areas for the housing would be restricted for residents. So basically the public would either have to walk, potentially take a bus in the future, or park in that first parking area, the Kestrel parking area for the public conservation area. And just to have public, again, it would be, the land would be owned by Kestrel. I was remiss not to mention actually that while Mass Audubon will be the primary holder of the conservation restriction, the city's conservation commission is actually considering being a co-holder of the CR for the land. So the city will ultimately, hopefully have a property interest in the conservation land too, which will allow the city to potentially invest future Community Preservation Act money. They were also already very generous, CPC or the city, in supporting the project, seeing the multiple goals, city goals that it serves, providing $600,000 for the purchase of the housing parcel. So there's an opportunity for the city to be further involved as conservation land really comes online and develops into something special.
Any questions? Sure. Is there a road circulating around the back? But it's like it's really plain. It looks like there's a road that around. What is that?
So right corner of trees, if you can see my
Yeah.
cursor. Okay, that is an existing farm road that exists today, and so that wouldn't be a road open to vehicle traffic. We would have it open for emergency access to the rear of the building, and also the intended use of the remaining conservation land could be agricultural, so access road for tractors, for any agricultural use back there, but that would not be public access for either the residents of the building or the public coming to visit the conservation land. So it would mostly be, like a pedestrian path for those coming to visit the site.
So will there be a barricade at that location?
Yes, it will be like right here. You can see my cursor again. There's going to be a gate here that fire, of course, can access through should they need to, but that restricts vehicle traffic.
I understand the bus shelter that's proposed is not necessarily part of this application, but I'm wondering about getting to that proposed location
Yeah.
from the site just kind of maybe have on all the way around. Now would be a time with an abundance of nice walking paths, just have the impacts we're going to cut through anyways.
Yeah, so if you can see on the screen right here, there is a walking path right here, again, being cautious of being around that wetland area that exists here at the front of the site. And so we are, excuse me, part of that, that bus stop that we would hope to be would also be adding a sidewalk along College Highway, and would be on the opposite side of the street now with the flow of traffic. We determined that that's the best location for that. So part of that would be crosswalks across at that location to a sidewalk to a bus stop. So yeah, it is a walk. It sure is a walk from the site, but we would have an all our residents, both the new housing and the senior building.
So will there be a gate, a permanent gate between the existing College Highway apartments and this new location?
No, it's a one-way circular.
So this new site is exiting apartments.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood that. Okay, so it's a one-way in and exit at College Highway.
Yes, the College Highway driveway will remain two-way traffic, but this new proposed is one-way and then exiting through that existing college highway driveway.
And there's an existing bus stop in that area.
Yeah, right at the driveway to college highway, one of the PBTA plans stops there.
I just have a quick question. It's a little bit different from what we're talking about right now. I can see that control of the land, it says Kestrel Land Trust. Control of the land. Who's gonna be running the units, like in terms of landlord, property manager?
Sorry. No, so currently Kestrel has the property under agreement, but at the acquisition, the community builders will acquire a housing parcel, which I can change slides here so you can see this outline here. TC, the community builders will acquire that housing parcel and control that, and then Kestrel will acquire the conservation land, and then that will go into conservation restriction with Audubon and in the city, possibly the city of Easthampton.
I guess my question is related to somebody has, goes through, somebody has a concern, who do they bring that to? Like individual people in the unit, they bring their kind of tenancy concerns to, and you know, I've heard lately some people talking about like they try to air a grievance to a prospective landlord or something, and it sort of gets lost in.
So it would be the community builders. Kestrel will have no ownership over the housing part of parcel of the land. It'll be a separate, separately owned entity. So the community builders would be that management directly to their on-site.
Any further questions from the board at this point? Reserve the right to continue at some point. It is
Thank you.
7:12. We thank you. And we will now ask for if there's members of the public who have any questions or concerns regarding the proposed 40B, may step forward. I'll ask again that you state your name and respectful and understanding.
Hello. I'm Gary Wilson. I'm at 377 Main Street. I'm a direct abutter, and I guess I'm a little late to the party here. Is there somebody that's supposed to be sending out notices to abutters in this room? Did you send notices to the abutters?
Yep, all butters were notified by post.
When was that sent?
That would have been about 2 weeks ago. I can get you an exact date on that.
I don't know much about development. I barely know enough of things. House, you didn't notice. What is that row right against my property?
We want to can we bring back up the plan so he can she can look at it?
Sure, I got
Get a
it.
better
Just a
understanding,
moment.
or maybe, Dylan, can you do that?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Give me just a moment here.
And please remember, you talked at the beginning, we asked that all questions and concerns be addressed. That's okay. All right, if you could indicate on the board approximately where your property is and where your concerns
Can
are.
I step around?
You may, yes. Don't, oh, reminder, don't touch the board, it's a smart board. All right, go ahead.
So that's me.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I just touched it.
So there will be a parking lot in the, so plan south of the property line. If you start at your property and come, yeah, there's going to be a parking lot for access to the public area that Kestrel will oversee, it appears. And then there will also be an access path that goes on the, what you would kind of consider the farm road at this.
Okay, is there any boundary of any sort? What is being What is that dark black line?
That's just the property line indicating. If there is, as far as I know, there's no increase in hedgerow or there's no plantings planned at this point, if I'm correct. We can have that addressed. We can look at having plantings, you know, or some sort of property clarification placed in that location.
Any new trees shown on the map are new plantings shown on there. And those are new trees.
Yeah, so the
Planting.
plans that are, the circles you see are the proposed new trees. Those do not include any existing vegetation.
That's right.
Okay. And what is this part? I couldn't, I was sitting back there and I couldn't see the person pointing at the screen here. What is this parking area?
That is the parking for the people, the public who are interested in accessing the trails or the Kestrel Land Trust area that's in that rear of the property.
And they're going to be walking along that boundary line?
There is going to be a walking path that goes all the way along the back. If you look at what looks like a road, it goes right along the edge of the property. Sure, it's, 8-10 feet off the property line and goes all the way along and then continues off into the
Okay, and are there any hours that people can roam or not roam, just day and night? Anytime?
No, I don't know what Kestrel's,
Should I come up to the?
yeah, if let's have that question addressed. That's a great question. Yeah.
Our property, the general rule is dawn to dusk.
On
Dawn to dusk open. Yes. I mean, we generally do not come by and close a gate for the. We're talking a little bit about, there are trails, I should mention though, that are on the housing parcel land around it. I imagine residents will be walking on those trails, at different times, but the general public, in terms of the parking area use, be dawn to dusk.
And I guess I have a follow-up question. I'm not sure if it's to you or to community builders. Is would there be any lighting on that path?
No.
No lighting on that path.
No, there could be, I believe there might be some lighting possibly in the parking area. I have to think through this now because we're the conservation restrictions, so we have to plan all this to see what is allowed. So I think we're making an allowance for parking, for lighting in the parking area, not on 24 hours, but but no lighting allowed along the path. Possible lighting along kiosks, solar powered lights, when things get dim, informational kiosks on that.
In this, the paths that will exist on the housing portion are an accessible path meant to design to bring our two communities together, our senior property with the family property together. We know our senior property utilizes the field for just being outdoor in nature, and so we wanted an accessible path so that two communities could be linked together. So we don't envision it being like a.
I'm sorry, most of us can't hear what she's saying.
Oh, sure.
I'm guessing the people at home can.
I just want to provide clarification on that path that we're referenced on the housing portion. It's not like a path like for hiking on or that kind of, it's more an accessible path to connect our two communities, our senior housing and our family housing, so that those two communities can be connected together. Thank you.
And do you have any other questions?
One more. Are there studies or reports or anything along those lines that would reference police reports or crime and being elevated to abutters?
I would have to, we could do some research and see what we could find, but I don't know if we have any accessible at this point. For the notification was sent to the, I know all city organizations received a copy of this application. And I'm sure we've heard from some of them or hear more as we go along, but I just wasn't sure if it was anything brought up by the police department that you know of at this point.
I know concerns were raised by the police department at this time, but there was no, crime study or anything like that.
Are you saying that you're concerned about people kind of just wandering onto your property? I mean, is that you're trespassing onto your property and
Or things missing.
What
Yeah,
general-
it's nothing specific that I can.
And did you guys say there wasn't a boundary, some kind of arborvitae's or a fence of some kind or something like that? Did you say that? I'm sorry, that's that part. You didn't answer that.
There's an existing tree buffer. And additional planning. Yeah, as well.
Is it enough to stop somebody from wandering off the property into someone else's property? Would it be sufficient like that? Like, some kind of barrier?
It's a very robust bramble and tree in overgrown border, so I expect it not to be too inviting.
Maybe one more, if I may. So the whole conversation, I think I picked up some of the water runoff. So was I correct in thinking there's no answer where that water is going to go?
The bylaw, the water that you collect on your property must stay on your property. That is state law. Am I correct in that? Yeah.
The water stays.
Yes. Water stays. There is an existing culvert, but we're not allowed to add anything to it. But nobody knows where it goes anyway. Which is concerning. But by statute, any water that you collect on your property is supposed to stay in.
And that's the case here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your questions.
Nicole Ashenfeld, Mayor, home address 123 East Street. I mentioned the home address, butter, the East Street access to the view shed. We work with Kestrel intensely to limit impact to the neighbors. Increase in crime or calls have been limited to overflow on the parking lot after dusk, where people are, it's after dark in there. The police actually keep an eye on those lots. So of course we would include the property owners, but Easthampton Police takes a look, and if a neighbor had an issue with somebody parking there after dark or tailgating or whatnot, the police respond and they have to arrest. Additionally, the other higher density housing areas of the town, Treehouse, Parsons Village, any of the senior center housing authority projects, Cottage Street Station have reported and brought no new crime incidents that are above what you would expect for the number of people across Easthampton. And the police department clearly they could provide documentation of that, and we've done that with other projects that have come of what might just considerations honestly on public safety. We have made provisions on the city side for our EMS. That's something that we do expect to uptick, where more people are living in Easthampton. We will need more EMS, paramedic, EMT outreach, and we have just successfully gotten another grant to expand that service in the city, another third for the housing projects that are coming before planning, but also this board as well as ones that are coming. The traffic is a mixed blessing. We have been looking at the traffic in that section of Route 10 for a whole bunch of different reasons. South and Main has been one, and any development of this parcel that was close, it actually adds to our case with Mass DOT to get a signal or more intensive traffic mitigation and calming at that site. We've been talking to District 2, Mass DOT for the last 5 years. and actually got them to move a little bit around the dangerousness of that section, because the other is not just the intersection, it's also the speed. So people's speed coming into Easthampton picks up. I don't know, just, yeah, it's very odd. I think the other side it doesn't, there aren't as many houses. So we anticipate leveraging, increase, any traffic, but people, pedestrian, actually go more towards pedestrian and biking safety to go to DOT. And we already have done that, saying, we think we're going to trip, signalization there. And to prepare for that, cost will be, we will talk to all involved parties, but as well as MassWorks. And we are hoping that this project would, we could couple with the applicant for Housing Works, which is similar to MassWorks, which is public infrastructure. And that is already in our pipeline. We time it out when we go to this, to those funds. And we have historically matched MassWorks with housing projects specifically, because it's one, you have more points on the application, and two, it's just a way for us to add to pedestrian and cycling and auto upticks and uses as the city grows and changes. I would just wanted to comment on my general support, very strong support for this project. On many reasons, we were concerned about this parcel of land for a very long time, just because of the unique nature of the back end of that parcel. We have been approached by 2 developers in the past for 300 units of apartments on this parcel, and it would have been an uphill fight for us to get those units down past even 150. The other thing that is I'm very supportive of, I'm very excited about, is that there are actually specifically designated agricultural parcels that have been rented in the past for people mostly to grow hay. But we have been talking to UMass Amherst, and we would share those conversations with Kestrel as well as Scott Land Trust around some innovative agricultural research or growing different species of apples. If you think of Cold Spring over in Belchertown. The last, and I commend the applicants, and something that the city is in the city's housing plan, are the deep retrofit for existing affordable units, as in the College Highway. We're seeing this being done at Treehouse, and CPA has supported that, as well as we support not just new units, but the deep retrofit of the College Highway apartments. The significance, economic significance and impact on those residents is, it's really impressive. It just cuts utility costs. The last thing I'll mention is the city's climate plan. Specifically mentioned the creation of such units, as well as the deep retrofit, as something in our top 20 priorities for the city in the climate plan. And if I may just ask or take to note to this plan, to the ZBA, we would love to see, both in public parking but also in resident parking, some level 2 EV chargers. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
I'm sorry, can you just, I heard you say something about 300 units down to 150. Can you just repeat that part of it?
So we were approached by a developer from South Hadley, Chris Bloom, and his original plan was 300 units in 4-story buildings on that, and it went substantially back more towards what will now be conserved. Depending on how he put the development together and the tools he would use, including a 40B, it would have been very difficult for the city to get it down to what we thought at the time was 150 units. And he actually backed out of the project. I'm not sure why. But we then had somebody else, I don't remember their name, and they had a very similar plan, about 270 units on that land. And they backed out as well. So I don't say this, I should, it's not a scare tactic as much as lots of people are looking at this land.
With hundreds of units.
Yes. Yes, and, you know, I would compare that to, tasting top and that negotiation of unions and getting that down. So density requirements allow you to put an amazing amount of units in a very small space. So we're grateful for one, I don't know, I remember the first meeting, I think it was 2 years ago, over in the Kestrel offices about with Jeff back and planning, what do you think about this? And that word. Also thank the CPA for their initial support of acquisition of this land, as well as what they expect, and I would expect return trips to the CPA to support the housing as we go along in this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathy Wazinski, 22 Overlook Drive. I have a number of concerns about this project. One of the concerns that I wanted to point out is I've spoken to many abutters, and most of them did not receive a meeting. And I did not notice that there was a 2-week notice on the city's website about this meeting either. So I will just point that out. I don't know that it needs the public hearing with that. I think the first thing that I'd like to say about the building, and I think many of the residents in the room would agree with me, these buildings are pretty ugly. Just like the building down on Cottage Street, it's an eyesore, and I think that we could do better in terms of integrating buildings that are coming into the city to be within the character of the community. And I know that in other committee meetings, that concept of remaining within the character of the community has been portrayed as wanting to maintain whiteness of our community, and that is not what we're wanting to talk about. And most people who are interested in maintaining the character of the community are offended by that statement. There are many ways to have it integrated into the community, and having large 3-story buildings like these, it just stands out, and it does not allow for integration within the existing buildings that are there. I have a question about how many acres do the buildings actually sit on? I know the buildable acreage was 12, but I'm guessing that the wetlands in the front take up a piece of that. So one of my questions is, how many acres does that building take up, the buildings take up?
Sort of quick answer on that one. The open space on the site is 79% on that 10-acre parcel. So presumably roughly 30% of it, I don't know the acreage. 3 acres, I guess, would be developed.
Okay, thank you. Secondly, in the traffic study, I did not hear any mention of True Heart Drive or the driveways that are directly abutting the site. I heard other driveways mentioned, but not necessarily the driveways that are directly abutting the site. There are 2 houses on either side, and I didn't hear anything mentioned about those in the traffic study.
Okay. I think it would have to do with the volume of traffic coming in and out of those roads and their impact on Route 10. But I would have to defer to the board would defer to the traffic study.
I think it would be important to know what the traffic has or the impact of the abutters and True Heart Drive and the community that's over there. What is the impact on the people leaving that street and the other side streets off of Main Street in the other direction? None of that was mentioned. It is already difficult to pull out of those driveways or out of True Heart Drive. So adding a significant amount of traffic to that street would make it harder for those residents. I'm guessing that this project will actually have an impact on abutters in terms of lights and others. And I was wondering what the developer planned to do to impact to mitigate the impact on abutters. I do know that the water and sewer in our community, 25% of it is over 100 years old. And I'm guessing where that culvert is going is right into our water and sewer system. Because into the sewer system. There's a lot of infiltrate getting into the system from many other areas of town. And my guess is that the water leaving the site is actually being infiltrated into our sewer system. I think the impact to our sewer system needs to be addressed. And if there is an impact to our sewer system from this development, there should be an impact fee for the development paid by the developer. I appreciate the fact that this hearing will go more than a single day. I would actually like to hear from the police department on the number of trips in the other developments that we have where they're visiting those sites compared to the number of trips to similar sized acreage in other parts of town. And also would like to hear from our fire department on how well the water mains are able to address the water flow issue for a potential fire. I do know that the water flow in the water mains up in Northampton Street is insufficient to handle the development that is going up there. And there's already significant water sewer issues impacting that development. So I would like to hear from the DPW as to what the age of the pipes on Main Street are and whether there's infiltrate occurring in those. I do not believe Main Street was included in the tie and bond report from 2018. The city was charged with assessing the remaining sewer systems. So we don't know whether there's infiltrate going into Main Street already. But given the amount of infiltrate that's coming in from other parts of the city, I would be concerned about Main Street because it is one of the older sections of the sewer system.
Okay, I'm gonna cut you off right there because there's two more people behind you.
Perfect.
You have an opportunity to come back up. There's
Thank
not
you.
once and done.
Hi, thank you. My name is Donna Chappello. I rent at 116 Pleasant Street. I have a couple of different questions for the developer. I don't know what the median income of Easthampton is, so when I'm thinking about 30%, 60%, 80%, I don't know what that income is. So I'd like to know that. Also, I'd like to know what is the relative sizes of the units, like how many square feet is studio as opposed to the primarily the 1 and 2 bedroom units. And my last question is, all of these units, I think you said with all of the units were mixed use. So how long does that restriction of affordable units remain? In other words, at some point, would this become a for-profit building, or does it always remain as affordable housing for the people? Thank you.
We just grab the answers to those because those are some quick, easy questions to answer, I think. We can.
And thank you for your question. I believe, and I don't have it in front of me, I don't want to be misquoted, but I believe the area median income for not changes the number of people. So we can, of course, get more information and provide a table for helpful. I might be a few $1,000. And then on the square footage of units, I am looking to pull that up, but I can also, a table was provided as part of our comprehensive definition, and the
Yes, so the studios are around a little under 550 square feet each. 1 bedrooms vary a little bit and are around 700 square feet. The 2 bedrooms are around 850 These 900 square feet, and the 3 bedrooms are there's around 1,100 to 1,200.
Did you, and I'm so sorry, I'm not like, your question. Oh, sure. So, we have a 99-year affordable in perpetuity construction based off CPA's funding of the project and also the community builders goals.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Greg Rashane. I'm a resident on 12 McKinley Avenue here in Easthampton. And I want to tonight offer my strong support for the project as proposed and encourage your swift approval of it. In that we are facing a pretty strong housing crisis here in Easthampton and around the region. I just want to say specifically that, I'm also somebody who appreciates a great deal the conservation areas we have in town, including the one that this would connect to. I've benefited from that a great deal. I've also benefited, as has my family, from stable and secure housing. That has really helped us in this town to weather some hard times and thrive in some good times. And I think we have an opportunity as a town to offer that to countless other families once this is built, and then again, as we just heard, in perpetuity. And to specific numbers as far as demand for affordable homes in our community, the town's housing production plan, which I believe was published in 21, noted that 1,300, just about 1,300 cost households, renter households in town, also some owner households. And that was data probably, I'm guessing, from 1920 around there. So we can only imagine that the number of cost burden households in Easthampton has escalated severely as housing costs have escalated a great deal in that time. And as finally, I just want to note that this has been noted. This property is noted in our housing production plan for housing. It's noted in our open space and recreation plan for open space and recreation. Here's an opportunity to work with two well-regarded organizations nationally, really, to advance those goals for our town. I think we should jump on it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening. I'm Marty Klein, 7 Stone Path Lane. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Past Common Conservation Trust. Been on the board of directors for over 2 decades. Those who don't know us, we are a nonprofit, all-volunteer land trust in Easthampton, and we've been protecting open space, farmland, and important natural resources here. And as also mentioned, we have 38-acre Pomeroy Meadows conservation area, which abuts this property. And there's approximately a half-mile property along the Manhattan River. We had our eyes on this property many years, but owing to our modest means and frontage of this property, we were not able to secure the go for it at any point. So I'm really grateful that bigger players have come in and done the work. This is really exciting for us, and we wholeheartedly endorse it, enthusiastically endorse this project, because it will protect both critical habitat in the Manhattan River corridor, plus prime farmland, which both stated goals of the Commonwealth and the city. Kestrel and community builders are uniquely qualified partners with unimpeachable track records in our region. We couldn't ask for better partners in this. It aligns with stated goals of the Commonwealth, as I mentioned, in the city, protecting important natural areas while promoting energy efficient housing. This is what smart growth looks like, and we urge you to approve this very exciting project, which will be the envy of many other communities across the Commonwealth when it's completed. We're lucky to have them wanting to do this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Tom Brown, 2 Grove Street, Easthampton, a member, acting chair of the Economic Development Commission here in Easthampton. Several years ago, we made one of our priorities in economic development housing. We knew the housing crisis and what it looked like here in town, actually here in the Northeast, if you will. And it's hard for a community to promote economic development if there's not a place for employees and customers to live. And if you want to drive down the cost of housing, just provide more of it and the cost will come down. It's a supply and demand issue. I've talked to several major owners of apartment complexes here in Easthampton, asking what they had for availability, and over time, it does ebb and flow, but the answer is 0. There are very few apartments, very few homes available here in Easthampton, and we need to add inventory to control cost, and this will do it. So housing should be a priority for Easthampton. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Chair, would you like to announce to the folks online how to
Oh, yeah,
participate?
if we could just, if there may be some folks online that we want to give them an opportunity first.
And then to anybody who's online, if you would like to speak, please hit the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen. We can go ahead and promote you to co-host so you can speak. I have Julie here.
Hi, yes, I'm Julie and I live in precinct 1. I just had 2 questions. One is your traffic study that you mentioned about the number of cars passing through and going back. You didn't give the full picture with the other complexes that are also being built. Can you give an overall, or can somebody give an overall from the old schools being renovated into housing, from the Northampton across Tacey's Top Street housing, all of that cumulative with your housing? What is the traffic impact? Because given that small number that you gave, it's kind of misleading because it's not the full picture. And then secondly, I just need somebody to educate me on resources. So we know that it's going to, the mayor mentioned it, it's going to have an increase in resources with our first responders. She didn't mention the resources for schools. So how do you work with the other housings that are being done to make sure that these resources are covered financially without burdening the people who own homes, so that our real estate taxes won't go above what is only authorized in Easthampton, that a proposition and a half, two and a half override won't be requested to meet demands, because you're going to need to increase resources cumulatively with everybody. But nobody's ever quite mentioned about this and how it's going to be funded. And will any of the burden fall on the homeowners? So if maybe you can educate me a little bit on that, I would appreciate that. And if there's a shortfall, who makes up that shortfall? And so I appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you for your questions and concerns.
Then we have Enrico Grillo here, who I'll promote here in a moment. All right, Enrico, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Hello, thank you. My apologies for not being able to attend in person. Like several people before, I wanted to just encourage the board to look at what this brings in terms of, oh, sorry, I forgot to say, 29 Parsons Street is my location. I want to encourage the board to look at what this brings in terms of our desperate need for housing in the city. As previously noted, we are in a housing crisis, both at the city level, at the state level, and even nationally. My focus particularly in my interest in these is around traffic and transportation. Of course, this site is heavily in an area, as much of the town is, where a lot of personal vehicles are needed. However, one thing that is not typically encapsulated very well in these traffic studies is what happens if these sort of housing projects are not built in town. Of course, we have a shortage of staffing and a lot of businesses in town. And if we do not have this sort of housing in town, the solution for that is for people living outside of Easthampton to drive into Easthampton every day as part of their commute. It is important with these projects to remember that while these may see more traffic in a localized area where this housing is built, a lot of this actually has the potential to reduce the amount of traffic that we see in the city and the amount of commute that is required for people to get to businesses within the city. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else on the strategy?
I don't see anyone else online.
So before you go again, I will ask, is there anyone else who's interested in speaking tonight, just so we can make sure we get everybody who's here an opportunity to speak? You go back for seconds. All right.
Couple additional questions. I'm wondering if any of this land that is being used for this project, I believe it's 55 acres, is already conserved. So that was one question. In 2021, I believe our percentage of affordable housing was roughly around 7%. Given the projects that have already been approved and the push for the new schools to all be affordable housing, I actually believe that we'll exceed the 10% even without this project. So I would wondering if we could get from our planning department an update on the percentages of affordable housing with the projects that have already been approved and pushed. In the last, one of the speakers online asked about all of the current projects. I think between Cottage Street, Ferry Street, Tasty Talk, Main Street, Oliver Street, and all the new schools, we're looking at close to 400 new units of housing. If we anticipate that there'll be 3 people in each housing, that's at least 1,200 new residents. That would put an impact on our resources. I don't know what the current capacity is for our 2 existing schools and what percentage of that capacity is used. But it would be helpful to know that for residents that are weighing in on this issue. And I think that was it for tonight.
Thank you.
At the pleasure of the chair, as far as answering questions, I have some quick ones, but I also on the schools, when Tasty Talk presented with their initial request for 300 units, which has now gone down, my office commissioned a study exactly for that, for what would the impact be on our schools if all units, which include everything that are still on the table, came to fruition. It would not overwhelm our school system. Currently, the high school is built for 600 students and there are 451. The pre-K to 8, while at capacity, is at capacity due to school choice, as well as lack of our kindergarten students staying from pre-K to kindergarten. So we do not expect an impact on our school that will go over what the school system currently currently can handle, which is right now we have 1,800 and like say 90 students possibly in the city who could go to our public schools. 1,411 attend. That has been steadily going down. We also anticipate a number of school children, even with these developments. Every single one of those units came online. The increase in student population, again, would not overwhelm our schools, but also the number of students coming in, at least 30% of them on a conservative estimate would not attend our schools. And that could be a parochial school or a private school, or, there's a homeschool, for instance. And certainly, we can, I'll get that study to Dylan in planning just for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Mass DOT District 2, we have asked them for total impact studies. With regulations and whatnot, that's a very difficult thing to get. We're hoping to get, because things are not totally built and there's no guarantee that they will be built. The projects in front of us are being phased from now. Well, actually, first stores would open in 2028, and those units would be added to our stock through 2032. Casey Top does not need an improvement in water until phase 2. And we have received an earmark for $959,000 to address the water on Casey Top. We anticipate MassWorks. The state will support our applications to do any upgraded infrastructure on the public side of that for this project. So, and a clarification going forward, would the chair rather the city answer the technical questions, providing that information to planning for a prior, the next meeting in writing, or would you want?
Yeah, I think that there's a series of questions here that I've jotted down. I'm sure Dylan has done the same. What I think moving forward, what we'll do is we'll put a list together of questions and put it out to the city and their the committees of the city, whether it's the Department of Public Works or fire, police, all that, as well as to the applicants, so they can respond to certain questions directly rather than, kind of do the hit and miss. Sometimes it's easy to do a quick, easy question, but you start getting into detail where you're going to want, traffic studies or additional documentation to make sure that we have all that. I prefer to put the questions out to them in a written form. It gives them an opportunity to respond professionally.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Well, we are approaching the witching hour of 8 o'clock. And if there is no one else who is interested in speaking this evening, I will ask that we have a motion for a continuation. Now, with that said, the board is having a training in 2 weeks from our friends at Massachusetts Housing Authority, or whoever, I'm sorry.
Massachusetts Housing Partnership.
Massachusetts Housing Partnership. There we go. To help with our writing of a decision on this application. These applications are daunting at the least, and we want to make sure we get it right. Our decision. So we will not meet in 2 weeks publicly. We will have a meeting. I believe it still has to be a public meeting, but there will be no discussion of the application at that meeting. So we will continue the application portion of the meeting in 4 weeks from this evening. At 6 p.m., not 6 a.m. Yes, still.
Yes, so we have that to continue. The continuation date would be June 26th, but we do have something on the agenda for that day at 6.
At 6.
We could put the hearing at 6:30.
Okay, so yeah, so let's say that we will continue our hearing for 6:30 on 6/26. Actually, all right, and with that, can I get a second? Second. All right. All in favor? All right. Thank you for your time. Thank you, public, for being invested in your community.
Matt, was it in favor of the continuation or an abstain? Not yet adjourned. Only that motion. The meeting's still on. We'll just continue here. Before we adjourn the meeting. I sent out, responded, thank you for that. So everyone can make all those 2 week meetings. Nobody has any summer plans that are gonna throw anything off or? Got it.
Is there opportunity?
Yep.
Just wanted any kind of.
Yes, yeah, you have the, from my understanding, you have the ability to moment rule in this meeting as long as you watch the meeting in its entirety. You submit to that meeting and you sign. Statement that you've done so. Yes, and then in addition, if you promote, you can participate fully hybrid, and there's no issues with that. Yes, we got all that. I know one of our regularly scheduled meetings, I will be out of town for that one. I'll look to see if anyone in planning has the ability to pick it up. If not, we can either move that date or skip that date. We can figure out if it goes over in July. That's all I've got.
I guess the question
as far as I know, we have the date, what you went out, written down. I've got the record of everywhere that it went to. And it went into the mailbox. Whether or not it actually reached where it was supposed to go, I think is a question that I now need to look into. They are postcards, what we've been doing for the past several years.
Thank you.
But I can see him on the list of postcards, his name and address on there. So why you didn't see one, I'm sure it's something to look into, see why they didn't get to where they're going, or if they got anybody. Yep.
So yeah,
I'm gonna look into that and find out what happened with that, if they've gone out, if they never made it out of the mailbox. Find out. Hopefully. It would have needed to happen prior to the meeting. The legal ad went out, and then all the postcards were all made, stamped, put in the mailbox, but it's a different question of ever actually made it there, so.
United States Postal Service. All right. Any other questions? Sure. We do? Yep. Right. All in favor?
Yeah.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.